I would like to summarize my experience flying so many RC warbirds, because I've started off flying the kind of mini warbirds. Of course, I've tried the E-Flite, the 400 millimeters, and then also the 800 millimeter from FMS and Hobby King, and then I've also flown this 1 meter to 1.2 meter wingspan RC airplane. And in my opinion, of course, I really dig the E-Flite mini warbirds or micro warbirds, because I think they are uncomplicated. You get them like an RTF kit. If you fly in the stabilized mode, they are so easy to fly, and they're really inexpensive. Also, as a first alternative to a beginner, I would certainly just suggest the E-Flite 400 millimeter warbirds, because they are truly a greatly designed RC airplanes. And then I get to the 800 millimeter warbirds, then from FMS and from Hobby King, and I think you can have a lot of fun with them. But I still think that the 800 millimeter is a little bit, it's like in the middle ground. It's not really that small, and it's not really big enough to be visible in the sky and to have a stable flying experience. So I would suggest to go for the 1.1 to 1.2 meter warbirds, because I think that's a manageable size. It's not a large RC airplane, so you can easily fit it in your car, and they fly really predictable, and they are visible in the sky also. So the planes I'm actually keeping for certain, first off, I am going to keep the 800 millimeter FMS Corsair. Because it's an RC airplane that I've featured on this channel before, and it's really fun to fly. I've crashed it, I've repaired it, made it into a belly lander and hand launcher. So I will keep it just for fun, and because I really like the inverted gull wing design on the Corsair. I think it's one of the most intriguing wing designs there are. So that's why I'm keeping it. But I'm probably not going to keep the E-Flite 1.2 meter. So if you just then step up to the 1.1 to 1.2 meter warbirds, I think hands down the best of them is the E-Flite T28 Trojan 1.1. It's an uncomplicated RC airplane. There are no retracts, no flaps, but it does feature telemetry. It's just a super great RC airplane. It's light, it has a nice size, the yellow makes it so visible, it's agile, you can run it on 3S, on 4S. It's just a fantastic RC airplane, maybe not the most exciting one to own, but I surely think that it's a step above all other warbirds as of now, in this size and in the planes I've tried. So if you just then look at the second place down from the Trojan, then it's very difficult, because I enjoy to fly most of them. But I have to speak about, you have three main brands, and that's E-Flite, and you have Arrows and FMS, and they are so very similarly constructed, all of them, and the packaging and everything. So when you assemble them, it's like if you have assembled one of them, you don't have to read the manual. You can just assemble all of them, because there are a few screws and just straightforward construction, really well designed as well. But when it comes to how they fly, to me at least, I think the E-Flite brand is a notch above the others. And then on second place, I think FMS. And many of the FMS RC airplane, they are just more or less just like an E-Flite RC airplane, but without a receiver if you purchase the BNF E-Flite version. So I certainly think that FMS, they are more or less as good, but I honestly don't like, I flew like the 900 and 80 millimeter P40B, for instance, and I think when you reach like 1 meter, the RC airplane becomes a little bit too small and more close to the 800 millimeter warbirds. So I would suggest to really get above 1.1 meter to have a good flying RC airplane. And then they are truly really visible in the sky also. So, I mean, Arrows then, it is a really well constructed RC airplanes, but in my experience, they are not as well tuned as the FMS or the E-Flite RC airplane. So they are on third place. So first off E-Flite, then FMS, and then Arrows RC. And I suppose if you really fly them and learn how to fly the Arrows RC, they are just as good as E-Flite or FMS. But just out of the box and how they are, I think if you purchase an E-Flite RC plane, you don't have to really fiddle with it. You just more or less put it together. You set up your TX and you fly them and everything is good. And that is more or less the case with FMS. Of course, you have to install your own receiver, and some of them do come with a reflex gyro or will come with a reflex gyro. But other than that, I think it's just a straightforward. But I think that the Arrows RC, they do demand a little bit more of trial and error to get them to fly good, and how to learn how to fly them, because I think they can be over control, and I surely experienced some odd behavior from all the Arrows RC warbirds. And honestly, if I would compare just like the T28 from E-Flite and the 1.1 and the Arrows T28, I think hands down the E-Flite flies so much better. It's so easy to fly, gentle and everything, and it's also so uncomplicated. I also think if you compare the E-Flite P47, for instance, to the Arrows P47. Now the Arrows is smaller at 980, and the E-Flite, I think it's 1.1 or something. But the E-Flite older P47D just flies fantastic. It also has this spring mechanism on the landing gears, which will surely absorb more impacts. I think that's a much better constructed RC airplane. I think it also maybe doesn't look that much better, but I really dig the green design on the P47. And then talking about one of the classic design, the Mustang P51D. I think if you just look at the design, I almost think that the Arrows looks a tiny bit better than the E-Flite. But when you fly them, the E-Flite Mustang is just so predictable. You can fly amazingly slow with it. It's just an amazing, almost too easy warbird to fly. So it might be a little bit unexcited. And then again, the Arrows can be a little bit over controlled, and it's also not as steady when you fly slow, because I've experienced when you're about to land and you have too low airspeed, it just stall on you, which the E-Flite doesn't do. So although they are kind of similar in size, 1.1 versus 1.2, the E-Flite is so much better. And then, of course, you have the design. For instance, if you just look at the design, I think when you see it in the sky, I think the E-Flite Corsair 1.2 meter looks just fantastic. It's I truly dig the Corsair design. I don't think it looks as nice up close, but when you fly it, and the inverted gull wing just looks amazing, and it flies just as good as the E-Flite Mustang P51D. They are extremely similar, but I think the landing gears on the Mustang P51D is a better construction, because the landing gears on the Corsair, they do turn 90 degrees to retract, and I've experienced some problems with the retract, so I think the Mustang is much better. And then we have some retracts, they do have doors that like on the PC21, for instance. And these doors can get stuck when you're about to retract or deploy the landing gears. So that's also a thing to consider. And then of course you have the difference between the tail draggers and the tricycle gear retracts. And I think in general all retracts, it is another weak point on any RC airplane, because I mean, if you have bad landings with retracts, chances are you will somehow break them, because the internal mechanism of most of these retracts, they do have like a thin screw that do retract and deploy the landing gear. And I've experienced, if you have rougher landings or some minor crashes, that the plastic housing breaks and this screw just get bent or is broken clean off. So, I mean, retracts are fun, but then again, if you just look at the E-Flite T28 Trojan with no retract, just simple landing gears that you pop into place, I think it is a more better option if you just look at durability on the RC airplane. So just to have some sort of list then, in my opinion, I think the E-Flite T28 Trojan is number one. I think actually number two would be the FMS CJ6, because I think it's a different design. I think it flies really great. It's also really lightweight. So in my opinion, I think the CJ6 is on the second place. And on third place, I'm not really sure which one, because then they are so similar. I mean, it's really difficult to actually pick one. I probably would pick the E-Flite P47D, because I think it's a great flying RC airplane. And I dig the fact that it does have this spring on the landing gears. Although they are retracted, it's the only RC airplane I own right now that has a spring mechanism. It's just a simple construction, and the RC airplane is discontinued, but it's a really truly fantastic RC airplane. So then E-Flite T28 Trojan, the FMS CJ6, the E-Flite P47D, and then of course I would keep the FMS Corsair, the mini warbird 800mm. So I mean, they're all really nice warbirds to fly and interesting, and all this, my experience flying all of these has just taught me a lot and how they are. So hopefully my advice will just help you make some decisions, and in the end I think you should pick the RC airplane which you really like the design. And then just do your own research, because I think you'll have lots of fun with any of these warbirds if you just learn how to deal with it and all the minor issues that might occur. So that's my opinion then about all these RC warbirds I've tried.